Accused Nazi war criminal Klaus Barbie went on trial this week in France.
John Dundon has that story and more in the World Report.
Abroad this week, a trial opened in France that has gripped the attention not only of the French nation, but of people all over the world. The man in the dock is a 73-year-old German-born named Klaus Barbie. He's accused of being a war criminal. During the Second World War, Barbie served as a Gestapo officer in the city of Lyon in occupied France, where he acquired the nickname the Butcher of Lyon, which about summarizes the crimes he's accused of: murder, torture, the deportation of hundreds of people, mostly Jews, to concentration camps. Barbie evaded arrest for several years, hiding out in Bolivia, and this week, a few days into the trial, he began refusing to appear in the courtroom. And Richard has been watching from inside the courtroom all this week.
Barbie claimed he's a hostage, not a prisoner, and was kidnapped, not brought back legally when the Bolivians expelled him 4 years ago. He told a shocked courtroom that a climate of vengeance in France made a fair trial unlikely, but left it to his lawyer to go on with his defense. Back in handcuffs, the frail 73-year-old gave what could well be his last interview. Asked in Spanish, "Are you afraid of what will happen?" No, I don't know what's going to happen to me. Moments later, the so-called Butcher of Lyon was on his way back to St. Joseph Prison, back to the 3-room suite of solitary confinement cells where he may now end his day. Serge Klarsfeld, the French Nazi hunter who worked for years to bring Barbie to justice, said the controversial trial will now be less like a circus.
The victims will be less nervous because I must say that Klaus Barbie kept an appearance of the man he was 45 years ago, and that could make the witnesses very nervous.
Earlier, commenting as his life history was read into the record, Barbie said the charges gave a false impression of him as a persecutor of Jews. He said he had no hatred for any minority, but he stopped short, even when pressed, of criticizing the Nazi notion of Aryan racial superiority. Defense lawyer Jacques Vergès said the decision to quit was Barbie's, but his appearance had been beneficial.
People were waiting for a monster. They have found an old man, very discreet.
Vergès, who says he'll use the trial to make the French confront their own collaboration and treachery during World War II and French atrocities in the Algerian War, said Barbie is challenging his expulsion in the Bolivian courts. The fascination of seeing the face of the man blamed for 10,000 deaths will now be missing, but there will be no lack of controversy. Richard Blystone, CNN, Lyon.
Here in London, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher set out this week to record a unique achievement in modern British history. She announced a national election for a month from now, which, if she wins, will make her the first British Prime Minister this century to serve 3 consecutive terms. But tradition rules on here in Britain, and first Thatcher had to take a drive to see the Queen. That drive to Buckingham Palace and her private meeting with Her Majesty fulfills an ancient formality that requires the Prime Minister to ask the monarch to dissolve Parliament so a new one can be elected. Tradition also requires the Queen to agree, and Thatcher was soon back at home making campaign strategy and also inviting TV crews to view what was supposed to be her private side, she and husband planning their vacation.
If we have an election early, we go on holiday in August.
Perhaps not the most relaxed or spontaneous of her early campaign appearances, but she says she won't take it all sitting down, even if she is well ahead in the polls. Britain's problems in Northern Ireland crossed the border south into the Irish Republic this week. Funerals were held for 8 IRA men killed in a shootout with British security forces last weekend. One of those funerals was held inside the Irish Republic. When the dead man was given an IRA military salute, Irish police balked. Clashes ensued, and the police found themselves backed into a stream, firing their guns to hold back the crowd. In other news this week, the Israeli cabinet is still divided over whether they'd agree in principle to sit down at an international peace conference with their Arab enemies and other nations, including the Soviet Union. Foreign Minister Shimon Peres found he did not have enough supporters to bring down the government over the issue, which seems to reduce the chance that the Israelis will face new elections anytime soon. American hostage Alan Steen appeared in this video released by his captors in Beirut. Steen, a college professor who was seized in January, read a statement that accused the U.S. government of not caring about the Americans missing in Lebanon. Several weeks ago, his kidnappers had been saying that Steen was ill, only days away from death. China released these pictures showing the damage that has been caused by an enormous forest fire in the country's northeast section. The fire began days ago and may not yet be out. More than 100 people have been killed and thousands made homeless. An election was won this week on the tiny island nation of Malta off the coast of Libya. The new party in power and the man who heads it want to lead Malta back to closer ties with the West after years of moving closer to Libya and closer to the Soviet Union.
And finally from abroad this week, a brief return to the British election story, only to report that it's meant employment for 44 workers in Scotland who have been hired on as extra help at a doll factory because of the election. The factory makes Margaret Thatcher dolls that squeak when you squeeze them, also squeaking versions of her opponents, but we're told reliably that the squeaking Margaret Thatcher doll is expected to be the front runner on the toy counters. For the Week in Review, I'm John Dunvan in London.
A new Congress was established in the Philippines this week, and the process belonged to the people. Power by ballot.
This is what Philippine President Corazon Aquino fought for. More than a year after leading the peaceful overthrow of the Marcos regime, Aquino presided over the first free congressional elections in more than a decade. An early return showed pro-Aquino candidates leading by a landslide. But the conservative opposition called the election a fraud.
But I think the people of this country know and would realize